Calling Bill Wurtz a YouTube legend is sort of an understatement. He's a skilled animator, musician, and storyteller, creating well-known hits such as History of the Entire World, I Guess, to classic memes such as Still a Piece of Garbage. But out of the three hats of animator, musician, and storyteller, it's really the storyteller functioning that causes a lot of mystery and a lot of confusion, which is a huge anchor in the Bill Wurtz allure. So today I wanted to take a deep dive in one of his animations that really showcases storytelling abilities and the way he utilizes imagery, movement, and action to create more meaning. In other words, Bill Wurtz's skill as a dramatist. Yes, you are finally watching an analysis and interpretation of a Bill Wurtz video, praise be to God. The video in question is going to be his relatively more recent video titled Out to Lunch, which funnily enough is one of the rare videos where Bill Wurtz actually doesn't utilize his music skills. It is completely empty of jingles, sound effects, or entire songs, which is actually important and we will be discussing it. If you haven't seen the video, it's literally only 46 seconds long, so pause this video, go watch it real quick, and come back to this video. But if you're too lazy and don't have time for that, I'm just going to be walking through the video. The general plot is that the main character goes in the kitchen to grab a snack, but instead of finding snacks, he finds his juggling batons. And then he pretty much tries juggling in different environments until he becomes internally frustrated and he goes out to lunch. But this is a Bill Wurtz video, and even if it's absent of his signature musical styles, it's still going to be complicated and weird and confusing and just strange.
Hey, Gina. Just kidding, there's nobody named Gina. I'll fix myself a snack. I've seen this before. I can do this.
So let's start with the beginning, of course. The main character introduces himself by humming a jingle and tossing a ball in the air. Now, remember we said that Bill Wurtz not utilizing music in a video is pretty strange in and of itself. But we are going to get to that later, but I want to talk about the tossing of the ball in the air. That's going to be a small motif. In a brief aside, a motif is simply a pattern that can be expounded upon or diminished throughout the course of a piece of art. And in this video, tossing a ball in the air is very important, and we'll talk about it throughout this analysis and interpretation. The character then addresses a person named Gina, but then he says there's nobody named Gina. Okay, upon first hearing it, you're thinking, okay, maybe there's no Gina there. But really pay attention to the character's words. He says there's nobody named Gina, implying that there might actually be other people around. Just literally, they're not called Gina. There's nobody named Gina. Now, in the first case, if there was somebody who just was Gina and they're not there, maybe the character is poking fun at the fact that he's alone. Maybe the character is talking to an imaginary friend or girlfriend or wife. And the name Gina is a very interesting choice, because if we were to look at this through a sexual lens, Gina sounds like, you know, vagina. So maybe this whole remark is just emphasizing a sexual undertone and talking about the fact that he's lonely. Maybe. Anyways, moving forward, he says that he's going to get a snack and he then goes to the cabinet. He stops tossing the ball and places it in the cabinet handle. And when he opens the cabinet, he actually finds 3 juggling batons. I don't really know what to call them, but they're those juggling things. This revelation triggers a latent memory inside of the main character, causing him to remember that he has this certain ability to juggle. Okay, couple things about this. Instead of finding a literal snack like a bag of chips or some cookies, the main character finds juggling batons. Maybe this is simply a metaphorical snack, aka something like a hobby, something not meant to be done seriously. Another thing, why does he have batons where snacks would be? Maybe this is some sort of satirical depiction of the starving artist, that he's struggling to survive, but he has exceptional skills somewhere else. Also, one more thing, remember, this is the first development of the motif of the tossing of the ball in the air. Instead of having one small object first, the main character levels up into 3 bigger objects, leveling up to do something that requires much more skill. Now, if we were to tie this motivic development back to the idea of this being a metaphorical snack, one thing we can pull out of this is that the main character wasn't satisfied with what he was doing beforehand. He wasn't sustained with the menial task of simply tossing the ball up in the air, which in and of itself could be a symbol of just doing basic, meaningless tasks. He needed something a little bit more to nourish him. He needed a snack. So he decided to do something to level up and to produce more skill. Okay, so we're already picking up ideas of alienation, unsatisfaction, and depictions of an artist. And these are only the first 14 seconds of the video. Let's move on.
Sure. Oh, look, here's an opportunity to forget my past. That's better.
Okay, in what I'm calling Act 2, the main character begins attempting to juggle. But instead of a successful attempt, he ends up knocking down a ceiling tile, and then marks the inevitability of it happening. But then he remembers that he has a door where he can cover up what happened. An opportunity to forget his past, he says. He pulls the door and then moves on to a larger environment. Okay, now we're starting to see a little bit of conflict here. It seems we have a man versus environment type situation. The character tries to do something successful, but he understands that his environment is limiting him. One thing I want to pay attention is that way he says sure. There are a couple different ways that could be read. My first and initial reaction to that delivery was that he kind of said it the way like a modern millennial would say it to themselves, or someone with like low self-esteem, someone who's used to failure. Like if I were to knock down a coffee cup, I'd be like, sure, why not? I mean, why? What else would happen? In other words, I experienced the way he delivered that word as a reflection of how he sees himself. It's quite possible that he sees himself as a failure, at least with the juggling. Maybe that's why the batons were put up in the first place. But the second way is a more rational approach. The ceiling was too low, he was trying to juggle. Of course, the batons would hit the ceiling and cause it to fall. There's no anger, there's no malice, it's just an observation that, oh, of course that would happen. Yeah, definitely. The ceiling is too low, why would I try to juggle? In this interpretation, it could be seen that with equanimity, he noticed the environment was just simply too small and he just had to move forward somewhere else. However, he does not fix the problem. He does not attempt to fix the environment that he messed up. Instead, he decides to forget his past by way of sliding doors. Fixing his problems will require facing them, so he simply chooses to forget and enters an environment that's much more spacious. All right, on to Act 3.
You know, I'm finally starting to feel more comfortable. Let's see if I can... Well, anyway, I'm going to lunch.
Okay, Act 3. The main character finally has some sort of success with juggling. It wasn't the fact that he was very bad at juggling, no. It was just that he was in a different environment, a much smaller environment. In this spacious environment, he's much more comfortable, and take notation of the quotations in the speech bubble. It says, comfortable. Maybe we can infer that he's as comfortable as he can be. Yeah, he's comfortable to the point where he can do it, but maybe he's not comfortable with doing the actual act. Now in this act, the character decides to progress his skill. This is inferred by the way he says, let's see if I can ... So we can infer that maybe the character was trying to do a new trick. He's already good at regular juggling. Maybe he was trying to do something else. But once again, we have another backfiring. In his attempts to grow and progress at his skills, he overshoots, and the baton gets stuck on a ceiling lamp, and it incidentally lines up perfectly on the ceiling lamp. Here we continue the development of the motif of tossing things in the air. We started with the ball, small, harmless. Then we moved on to the batons, larger and more complex, which eventually led to the destruction of the ceiling. Now we have a baton stuck on the ceiling lamp, due to the character's attempt to level up and become better. After this incident, he says, anyways, I'm going to lunch. So now we're starting to develop a theme of abandonment. In Act 2 or Part 2, the main character leaves the environment he destroyed because of his inability to assess the environment. And now in Act 3, the character once again leaves his environment, leaving the juggling baton on top of the ceiling lamp. In this case, he's not trying to fix his environment. Rather, he's not trying to reacquire what he had lost. Okay, very important thing in this last act or part. He says, anyways, I'm going to lunch. Remember, going back to Part 1, we postulated with the idea that the snack in question is the actual hobby of juggling. So after 2 attempts of doing this thing, the main character finally decides to go to lunch, which could be interpreted as, I'm going to find a deeper skill set. I'm going to find something that provides more satisfaction and nourishment and purpose than this simple hobby of juggling. Maybe the character feels he's not good enough to juggle and that he needs to do something that's actually much more stable, much more, I don't know, real, much more fulfilling, something like that. And now on to Act 4, which of course showcases Bill Wurtz's signature surreality.
It's moments like this, leave these up here. It's moments like this, folks, you go to lunch.
Okay, Act 4, and this is the climax of the entire thing. As he leaves the other environment and heads out to lunch, he begins addressing somebody, saying, in moments like this, the moment in question being a repetition of failure. But after this comes the signature surreal moment, where the main character decides to leave the remaining 2 batons by tossing them nonchalantly on top of the chandelier, throwing them in the way where they are perfectly vertical and standing perfectly balanced. And then he continues his address saying, it's moments like this, folks, you go to lunch. So part 4 is the climax. It's the culmination of some of the things that have been building up throughout this 46-second video. The motivic development of the ball being tossed in the air has reached its climax. We went from a small ball that was tossed underneath the ceiling to 2 batons perfectly landing vertically upright on a chandelier. And we have the development of the theme of addressing people beyond the environment. In the beginning, we have the character addressing somebody named Gina. And now at the end, we have the character addressing a group of people, folks. But let's talk about the obvious weird part of this whole thing, the chandelier thing. So the character's inferred entire goal is to juggle and to progress at juggling, correct? And throughout this video, he seems to fail at juggling, either at juggling in the correct environment or progressing at the skill. And the character sees himself as failing, which causes him to take a break and go out to lunch. However, what if we're not witnessing failure? We're witnessing the progression of excellence in another skill. Yeah, the main character wasn't getting any better at juggling, but he actually ended up doing really well tossing things into the ceiling. He goes from not hitting the ceiling to hitting a ceiling tile, to getting one of the batons to incidentally land horizontally on the ceiling lamp, to ultimately getting both batons to land upright on the chandelier. But the catch is that he does it so nonchalantly. He knows that he's become excellent at tossing things into the ceiling and landing them. But that was never his intention. His intention was to get better at juggling. Or was it? Cue Vsauce theme music. We don't actually know if that was the intention of the juggler. In Act 3, the act that preceded Act 4, we never know if landing the baton on the ceiling lamp was the trick that he was trying to do. All we know is that he begins juggling and then he says, let's see if I can, and then the baton lands on the ceiling lamp. What if that was the thing that he was trying to accomplish? And this is what I love about Bill Wurtz, and this is what I love about this video in general. It can have multiple different interpretations. Maybe he went out to lunch not because he was failing at what he was doing, but because his practice yielded much success. In either case, the metaphor of lunch being a larger, much more substantial skill set still stands. If he was failing at what he was doing, then he needed to move on to something much more serious and much more meaningful. And if he was successful at what he was trying to do, maybe he wanted to move on and do something much more serious. Or, of course, lunch could be actual lunch and he just wanted to take a break from whatever he was doing. Of course, that's always there. Okay, but what was the point? Also, this was a point that I wanted to bring up earlier, but I kind of just left it for now. Doesn't this whole video feel like a set or a stage, as in a theater? To me, it feels like I'm watching something that has a studio audience. Whether it's a TV show or a play or something, I don't know. It feels like I'm watching someone who knows they're being watched. I mean, duh, the character breaks the fourth wall a couple of times, right? Actually, he doesn't break the fourth wall 2 times. We can only be sure that he's broken the fourth wall once. And even then, it's a little iffy. In the first instance, he says, hey, Gina. And then he says, there's nobody named Gina. So even then, it could be seen that the character is addressing his environment and just poking fun that he's lonely. But definitely, it's the final thing that he says that causes us to know that he's breaking the fourth wall when he says, it's moments like this, folks, you go to lunch. It's really only at the end that we realize the character understands he's being watched. The character knows that he's performing for other people. But what about the case if he was addressing somebody in the audience when he first talks to this imaginary Gina? Maybe this is the character implying that he knows his audience. He has identified exactly the kinds of people who would watch him perform. Okay, yeah, bro, yeah. What does this all mean, though? Like, what is Bill trying to tell us? What was the point of making this analysis and interpretation video, for kicks? I mean, on one hand, yeah. But on another hand, I was really tired of people saying that Bill Wurtz videos, like they kind of had a meaning, but they weren't like there. It's kind of iffy. I felt like that there had to be something to what Bill is trying to tell us. And here's the final part of my essay or analysis, interpretation, whatever you want to call it. I sincerely think Bill is talking about himself. Even I think it's a reach, but like with the evidence that I've seen, I think Bill is talking about himself. Yes, I will explain. Okay, so here's this person that the internet largely knows for their extreme musicianship and their extreme animation skills, right? And he's incorporated a little bit of live action in there too, right? Him singing and dancing and just doing random stuff like shaving his piano. But really, the internet knows him for his mastery of using music to articulate a vibe, right? History of the Entire World, I guess, was known not only because of its ability to educate the history of the entire world, more or less, in a way that's memorable, but also because of the catchy jingles. And for every Bill Wurtz song, intertwined with that is an animated video. Animated in a way that is always interesting, mind-bending, and just fun to look at. But once again, remember I told you this is one of the few videos. I don't want to be certain. I haven't watched all of his 433 videos out there, but this is the first video I've seen where it is largely silent. And I'm talking no musical punctuations, no jingles. And I think Bill did this on purpose based on the fact that the very first thing the character does is he hums a jingle. Bill seems to set up this animation as if it's a stage play without any musical productions. Now, over the course of what I'm about to say in the next few minutes, these are all just hypotheses. I'm not saying these are true, but this is just what I'm thinking. What if Bill is trying to tell us that he's trying to leave music? Not leave it entirely, not leave it forever, but just take a break. I know we're not supposed to be equating the speaker with the artist, but here I'm saying that the speaker is actually just performing the emotions of what the artist, Bill, actually feels about his career as an artist. Okay, let's do a quick recap of the analysis and interpretation then. The character remembers that he has this hobby. And even though the hobby was related a little bit to the thing that he was doing prior, aka tossing a ball in the air, it seems as though he almost completely forgot about it. He attempts to be reacquainted with the hobby, but he finds that the environment has struck him down. And instead of addressing it, he just runs away from the environment. Now, in a more spacious place, the character is more comfortable doing the thing that he wanted to do. But he felt a desire to progress. And in his attempt to progress, he loses part of the thing that enabled him to do the hobby. After his 2 attempts, and I won't call them failed because remember we said it could be seen as failed or successful. After his 2 attempts, he decides to take a break. And before leaving to go take a break, he showcases supreme proficiency at doing something that he was practicing, even if it's unsure to the audience whether or not he wanted that particular skill or not. But nonetheless, he leaves exhibiting supreme excellence at a skill. Now, I'm making this video about this video because this is the last video that Bill Wurtz has posted, hopefully so far. And the fact that I'm getting these messages through this video, which happens to be the last video that he's posted, hopefully so far, is really troubling, I guess. Or maybe I'm saying that we really need to pay attention to what Bill is trying to tell his audience. So how does this apply to Bill? What if Bill didn't really intend for his musicianship to get showcased? What if he didn't intend for it to get as well known as it is now? And maybe what if he didn't intend for his animation to get this big? My idea is that Bill is saying that his skills as a dramatist aren't as showcased. My idea is that Bill doesn't think that his skills as a dramatist or a screenwriter or a playwright or whatever you want to call it, a writer, isn't well known as he wants it to be or isn't as developed as he wants it to be. Not saying that it isn't good, because I clearly think it is, but that he wants that part of his artistry to be showcased rather than his music and his animations, which is kind of like the crux of his whole thing, right? And the only reason I say this is because this video is really set up like a play, and it's largely absent of the absurd animations that he's known for. In fact, the only thing that's really absurd about this video is the batons being upright. I mean, even realistically, you could say that the batons could have had like magnets at the bottom of them and the chandelier was a magnet and they just landed upright due to the attraction. Even the absurd element of this video, when you really think about it, can be attributed to a theater trick. Other than that, this video is really realistic. It could be done even if it wasn't an animation. Maybe Bill is telling us that he got really good at one skill, or maybe in this case, two skills. What if the batons are representative of the skills? Now, this is a complete reach, but level with me here. What if the batons represented music, animation, and writing? What if he's saying that one of those skills initially caused his environment to crash down, but he still picked it back up? But in the process of becoming more comfortable as an artist, he lost one of those skills. And again, it's my idea that writing or playwright, screenwriting, or whatever is one of those skills. Remember how he lost the baton on the ceiling. And then remember when he leaves, he places the batons upright nonchalantly. I think these are representative, obviously, of his music skills and his animation skills. I mean, come on. Okay, well, if that's like a possible interpretation, what about the way he addresses people in this video? If we can say that this character does represent Bill, what does it mean about the people he addresses, this imaginary Gina, and the folks he talks about at the end? Well, once again, as stated in the beginning with the Gina situation, maybe Bill is talking about a lack of a social relationship, whether it's a friendship, whether it's a relationship. I mean, remember, Bill is sort of a guy who is a recluse. We don't really know much about him as an audience. Maybe there are some people who are actually friends with Bill Wurtz who decided to keep his personality a secret. We don't know. But again, I believe that the character in the beginning is exhibiting a keen awareness of not the fact that he's lonely, but out of the people who are around him, there is missing a specific person. It's not that he's without social connection, it's that the person he'd like to socially connect with isn't there. He doesn't enter the set saying, hey folks, he says, hey Gina, and then he says, there's nobody named Gina. Remember, this is all interpretation, this is just me spitballing here. And then there's him at the end saying, in moments like this, folks, you go to lunch. He recognizes that there's people watching him, but there's not a lot of people connecting with him outside of the performer-audience relationship. Now remember, him leaving the stage, as I'm calling it, would imply that he's also leaving the audience. Remember, if the character is Bill, maybe this is him leaving the audience, but him pursuing deeper relationships. And another thing just came to me, funnily enough. If we were to say that the batons did represent music, animation, and writing, and that writing was the thing that got abandoned, if the character were to leave the stage and connect with other people in a way where he wouldn't be a performer, but actual person to person, heart to heart, this would enable him to connect on a deeper level, which would supply him with an ability to become a better writer or a better dramatist, to understand human nature better. Remember, we can say that out to lunch means that in a larger context, the character is pursuing something deeper, much more sustainable, much more richer. And it's not saying that, if the character does represent Bill, It's not saying that the music and animations and the artwork and the masterpieces that he's done so far isn't, rich. It's just that he might feel as though he's not getting fulfilled in what he's doing now. Of course, the work he's doing to us seems rich and fulfilling. We get a lot of enjoyment, get a lot of pleasure. Clearly, I'm getting a lot of pleasure at looking at this video, this 46-second video in this way. But maybe he didn't intend to get this good at those things. Okay, maybe I said that in a way that might have been offensive. Of course you want to get good. Of course he got good at these things. You know what? That's not what I'm trying to say. Of course this took a lot of hard work. I'm not saying that it didn't take a lot of hard work to get this good. I'm just saying maybe it's possible that there's something missing. There's something missing, and he knows it's missing. And despite the fact that it's satisfying a lot of people, despite the fact that it earned him a lot of success as an artist, he's missing something in his life. And that's what I really think Out to Lunch means. It means that, this weird space where you succeed in something, but you also failed in something, and you can kind of see both at the same time. And in this vagueness, it causes you to move towards something deeper, much more clearer, much more lucid. Instead of just having a mere snack, a bag of chips, something that'll just, wipe away the hunger a little bit, the character is motivated to move towards something larger and deeper and more nourishing. And if this, in fact, does relate to Bill, I think we're going to be seeing like a major career switch. And remember, this is literally just a hypothesis and an idea. Bill might be watching this video. If you're watching this, Bill, I love your work, obviously. I hope you don't get offended by this interpretation. It's just something that I thought, like it made sense to me, but this might not be what it meant at all. But whatever you do, man, whatever you do, you have killed it, man. You have annihilated it. You've killed the game. You changed the game. For me, you are one of my favorite artists, and I love your work. We love your work. It's amazing. And whatever you do, you're going to be excellent at it, man. So there's probably a lot more that you guys out there have seen in the video. Please discuss it. Discuss away. I'm not that great at analysis and interpretation. Glory to God that I'm able to see the things that I see now. But like, I want to hear your ideas. I want to hear your thoughts. I want this was intentionally is just to provoke thought, provoke conversation about one of my favorite artists. So please discuss in the comments below. Please share this video to people who appreciate Bill Wurtz. And I hope this really puts a mindset in those who really don't think that these videos have a deeper meaning and that they're just silly and weird, or to the people who want to be affirmed that, hey, do these things, make sense to you or something like that? Because, to me, they do, and you're not alone. So I really hope this blesses somebody. Hope this allows somebody to go out and look at more Bill Wurtz videos and see the meaning and behind these things. And again, keep watching Bill Wurtz, and have a wonderful day, y'all.